There's a strange kind of loneliness nobody prepares you for. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the kind where your phone is full of notifications. Yet nobody truly knows how you feel. The kind where you laugh in public, reply, "I'm good," keep posting stories, keep showing up to work, keep answering texts. But at 2 a.m. you sit in silence wondering, why does being alive feel so emotionally exhausting? When we were younger, adulthood looked different. We thought growing up meant freedom. Freedom to leave toxic places. Freedom to choose our own life. Freedom to become someone important. Nobody told us adulthood would also mean drifting friendships, emotional burnout, silent anxiety, feeling replaceable, eating dinner alone after work, realizing everyone is struggling. Privately, and maybe the hardest part, nobody talks about it honestly because modern loneliness doesn't look dramatic anymore. It looks functional. People go to work, people go to the gym, people post selfies, people reply with memes, people say, "Ha ha ha, I'm fine," and then they go home feeling emotionally numb. Have you noticed this too? Sometimes your entire day disappears into screens. You wake up and immediately check your phone. You scroll before your brain fully wakes up. You consume hundreds of faces, opinions, videos, lifestyles, and somehow end the day feeling emptier than before. That's not accidental. According to research from the former U.S. Surgeon General, loneliness has become so severe that it's now considered a public health crisis. Chronic loneliness can affect the brain and body similarly to smoking multiple cigarettes a day. Think about that for a second. Humans evolved in tribes. We evolved needing connection, eye contact, touch, belonging. But modern life created something psychologically confusing, constant digital connection, without emotional safety. And your brain feels that difference. Deep down, there's something terrifying that a lot of young people today never talk about. At some point, they stop feeling sad. They just become emotionally numb. And the scariest part is how quietly it happens. Nobody notices the first day you start disconnecting from yourself. You still go to school, still go to work, still post stories, still laugh when people talk to you. But deep down, everything feels painfully empty. Psychologists call this emotional numbness. It's when the brain slowly shuts down certain emotions to protect you from carrying too much pain for too long. When someone spends years feeling disappointed, ignored, unseen, or emotionally alone, the mind eventually decides, maybe it's safer not to feel anything at all. And at first, it almost feels harmless. But the truth is, that's usually the moment people begin losing themselves. Nothing excites you anymore. Text, messages feel meaningless. Conversations feel exhausting. You start replying later, talking less, disappearing from people a little more every day. Not because you hate anyone, but because you're tired of explaining feelings nobody ever seems to fully understand. And honestly, that might be the loneliest kind of pain in modern life. Being surrounded by people, yet still feeling invisible. A lot of young people are living like this right now. They stay awake at 2 or 3 in the morning not because they can't sleep, but because nighttime is the only moment they can finally hear their own emotions. During the day, they pretend they're okay. They force themselves to function, to smile, to seem normal, but late at night, all the emptiness gets louder. Have you noticed something strange about this generation? We are more connected than any generation before us, yet somehow more emotionally alone than ever. We have thousands of followers, but not one person we feel safe calling when our mind starts falling apart. We talk every single day, yet rarely feel truly understood. And after enough disappointment, people slowly stop expecting anyone to stay. They stop texting first, stop opening up, stop hoping, Because hoping too much and getting hurt over and over again changes you. So instead, they choose the safest option possible. They stop feeling. But emotional numbness doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes it simply means you've been surviving in silence for way too long. Maybe nobody around you realizes how much you're carrying inside, but if you're still here, still listening to this, still trying to make it through another night, then there's still a part of you that wants to be saved. A part of you that still wants to be understood, to be loved, to finally feel seen by someone. And maybe that small part of you is the reason you haven't completely disappeared yet. So, if lately you feel disconnected from your own emotions, please don't abandon yourself too. Rest. Talk to someone you trust. Or at the very least, allow yourself to feel again. Because the scariest thing isn't sadness. It's waking up one day and realizing you don't feel anything anymore. And the worst part? Society rewards this. Being emotionally detached now looks mature. People praise independence. People admire being unbothered. People joke about having trust issues. People romanticize isolation. But psychologically, humans are not built to emotionally survive alone for long periods. Your nervous system literally changes when loneliness becomes chronic. Studies in neuroscience show prolonged isolation increases stress hormones like cortisol while reducing emotional regulation over time, which explains something many people secretly experience. Why small things suddenly feel overwhelming. Why you overthink simple conversations. Why you feel exhausted after social interactions. Why your chest feels heavy at night for no obvious reason. Your body remembers emotional disconnection even when your mind tries to ignore it. And then there's dopamine. This part matters more than most people realize. Modern apps are designed around dopamine loops. Every notification, every like, every swipe, every short-form video. Tiny emotional hits. Your brain keeps expecting stimulation. But dopamine without meaningful connection creates emotional starvation. You feel entertained without feeling fulfilled. That's why after hours of scrolling, many people suddenly feel this weird emptiness, like their soul consumed noise all day but never received comfort. And honestly, a lot of people aren't addicted to social media itself. They're addicted to escaping silence, because silence forces you to hear your real thoughts. Thoughts like, am I falling behind in life? Why do my friendships feel temporary now? Why do I feel lonely even around people? Will anyone truly stay? Truly, maybe adulthood becomes lonely because this is the first time nobody is guiding us anymore. As children, life had structure. School, family, routine, built-in friendships. Then suddenly, adulthood arrives, and everyone quietly scatters into survival. What mode? Some get married, some move away, some disappear emotionally, some become too busy fighting their own battles, and nobody warns you that one day you'll miss random moments more than major events. Late-night conversations, inside jokes, sitting in someone's room doing absolutely nothing, because connection was never really about doing. It was about feeling emotionally safe. I once heard someone say, the hardest part of adulthood is realizing nobody is coming to emotionally rescue you. And honestly, that sentence hurts because it's true. There comes a moment where you realize healing is mostly invisible. Nobody claps for it. Nobody sees the nights you spend trying not to fall apart mentally. Nobody sees the emotional battles happening behind your normal face, especially men. A lot of men were raised to suppress vulnerability completely, so instead of saying, I feel emotionally lost, they say, I'm just tired. Instead of saying, I need support, they isolate themselves, and over time that emotional suppression becomes loneliness disguised as independence. But women experience another kind of loneliness too. The loneliness of always being emotionally available for everyone else while secretly feeling unsupported themselves. The loneliness of carrying invisible emotional labor nobody notices. Different pain, same emptiness. And maybe that's why so many young adults today feel exhausted even when they're technically doing okay. Because survival and fulfillment are not the same thing. You can have a job and still feel purposeless. You can have followers and still feel unseen. You can be surrounded by people and still feel emotionally alone. That contradiction is becoming one of the defining emotional experiences of modern adulthood. Let me tell you a situation that might feel painfully familiar. Imagine this. It's late at night. You've already watched videos for hours. Your room is dark except for phone light. You open Instagram again, even though you already checked it 5 minutes ago. You see old classmates traveling. Someone got engaged. Someone bought a house. Someone looks happier than you. Suddenly your life feels smaller. You start questioning everything. Maybe you type a message to someone, then delete it, because you don't want to seem needy. So instead, you put your phone down, stare at the ceiling, and distract yourself until exhaustion finally knocks you unconscious. Then tomorrow, you repeat the cycle. A lot of people live like this silently, every single day. Psychologists call this emotional avoidance. When people feel overwhelmed internally, they often escape into distraction instead of processing emotions directly. More scrolling, more music, more work, more gaming, more content, more noise. Anything to avoid confronting the uncomfortable truth. I don't feel connected anymore. And over time, emotional avoidance creates emotional numbness. Not because you're weak, but because the brain protects itself from chronic disappointment. If enough relationships feel temporary, the brain stops attaching deeply. If enough people leave, the nervous system learns distance feels safer. That's attachment psychology. Some people become anxious. Some avoid closeness entirely. Some crave connection while fearing it at the same time. And honestly, many adults today are walking around carrying invisible attachment wounds they don't even recognize. But here's the insight nobody likes hearing. Loneliness is not always caused by being alone. Sometimes it's caused by performing a version of yourself nobody truly knows. That's why some people feel lonelier in groups than by themselves. Because pretending is exhausting. Pretending to be okay. Pretending not to care. Pretending to be emotionally strong all the time. Eventually, the soul gets tired. And maybe the deepest human desire isn't success. Maybe it's being understood without needing to explain everything. To have someone notice the change in your voice. Someone who says, "You've seemed distant lately." Someone who asks twice when you say, "I'm fine." Real connection is becoming rare because attention itself became fragmented. People listen while scrolling, reply while distracted, exist beside each other without emotionally arriving, and your nervous system notices that absence, even when nobody says it out loud. But despite all this, there's something important you need to hear. Feeling lonely doesn't mean your life is broken. It means your brain and body are asking for real connection again. Not performance, not algorithms, not constant stimulation. Real human warmth. And healing usually starts smaller than people expect. Sometimes healing begins when you finally stop pretending you're okay. Sometimes healing begins when you text the friend you miss, when you go outside more, when you let yourself feel emotions instead of numbing them immediately. Sometimes healing begins when you realize you are not the only person secretly struggling with adulthood. Millions of people are lying awake tonight, feeling the exact same emptiness. They just hide it differently. Maybe adulthood was never supposed to be about becoming emotionally invincible. Maybe it's about learning how to stay soft in a world that constantly pushes people toward emotional disconnection. And maybe the bravest thing someone can do today is remain emotionally open after being disappointed repeatedly. That takes strength. Real strength. So if you've been feeling distant lately, if life feels emotionally heavy for reasons you can't fully explain, if you feel exhausted from carrying thoughts nobody sees, this is your reminder. You are not failing at adulthood. You are experiencing the emotional weight of being human in a hyper-connected but emotionally disconnected world. And despite how lonely it feels sometimes, there are still people out there capable of understanding you deeply. Don't give up before you meet them, because one honest conversation, one real connection, one moment of feeling truly seen can remind a person why life still matters. And maybe tonight, that person needed to hear this.